name is David Daniel with the Centerville Press, and we're working on documenting a living history of the events that occurred 50 years ago on May the 22nd. Or was it? It was May, wasn't it? May.
Yeah, 27th. But I think it's 27.
27th.
Yeah, I think you said.
Okay, enunciate.
You said 22 yesterday. Yeah.
Well, 2nd and 7th sound similar.
Yeah.
50 years ago, we're doing a booklet and also a website, and we're trying to accumulate an overall picture of the events of that day because it was such a important event in the county's history and also in a lot of people's lives, and a lot of things occurred that the generations coming behind us won't know about if we don't tell them. So we've got another gentleman here today with us that I'm very grateful for, that was actually present that day where the tornado occurred, and he's willing to share with us what he knows. And I want to welcome Alvin George to the Centerville Press video website, and thank you for being here, Alvin.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
I appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, tell us where you come from. What was your childhood? Who your parents were, and did you have any friends?
Not me. I was actually born in Beaumont, Texas.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Stayed there. Actually, I moved several different places, but that's where I was born and went back there. That's where my dad passed away at 9.
Who was your dad?
Alvin George, Jr.
What did he do? What kind of?
He worked with computers back then.
Really?
Like,
interesting.
actually,
I had no idea.
He had some machinist background also.
CAD type things, computer animated.
No, and that computer was half big as this room. You know,
There's another whole story there.
It had the cards that punched the holes in it.
He's back in the mainframe days.
So, moved from there to, after he passed away, I went to Tennessee. He worked there for a while.
Where in Tennessee?
Memphis. Didn't stay there long. When he got sick, we went back to Texas, and then after he passed away, we moved to Mobile.
You kind of got around, didn't
Moved
you?
from Mobile to Shreveport, Louisiana.
Well, it sounds like your house was almost in the back of the car.
And then from there, I came here when I was 13.
Well, how did you and Sharon cross paths and get acquainted?
She was...
And are y'all still getting along?
Yeah, most of the time. Sharon was a little sister of one of my best friends. And you know, we all rode motorcycles and carried on, and she was always in the background till she grew up.
And she caught your eye,
Yeah,
didn't
she found it.
Well, and that's been a good thing, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah, I got me a friend like that.
Married in 1975.
You know what I told my wife recently? I said, darling, we've celebrated our 49th anniversary, and I'm right fond of you.
Might well be.
I said, if we keep this up, we'll be friends. Well, go ahead now. That's your upbringing, your youth. How did you come to Bibb County?
That's when I was 13. I moved in with my aunt and uncle, Margie and C.W. Dunlap.
Where'd y'all live?
Down on the Haysop Creek, down in Brent. A little house on the right before you get to the creek.
You kind of country, wasn't you?
Pretty much. And then after that, mother moved. She moved, and
Who's your mother?
was Rebecca George.
Who was she before she married?
She was a king
Where is she from?
in Louisiana.
Now, how many brothers and sisters or siblings have you got?
I've got 2 older sisters.
Where do they live?
One's in Minnesota and one's in Birmingham.
Yeah, y'all just sound like Americans to me.
That's it.
Well, tell us about you growing up in Bibb County. Where'd you go to school?
I started at Bibb County Junior High, went through the 10th grade, and then I finished in Marion at Perry Christian which was a little private school down there. And that's where I graduated.
Well, your career has been in. Tell us about your work. What do you do?
I own a machine shop. Started that went to trade school at Bessemer State Technical College, and then worked several jobs, and then went in business in 1983.
Well, you've been
ever since.
You've been a kind of a standard in this area for the type of work that you guys do. I know quite a number of the industries around this area have called upon your company for services and help to keep them operating. So I know you have a good reputation, and a good reputation in the area and in the state, for that matter.
We try to. We do work all over up in North Carolina.
And you work too, don't you?
We work. Not hard as I used to, but
well, that's all right. You can slow down a little. You can slow down a little bit.
Got good employees.
You're blessed if you got that, sir. That's a blessing for sure. Well, tell us what you were doing on the day that the tornado came through. Tell us about the events right prior to the tornado, if you would.
Well, as we all did in my teenage years, we hung out in the parking lot over in where Save More is. I'm not sure it was called Save More then, but that's just where.
Why did us guys used to hang out in parking lots? Just so we could see if a girl would drive by, right?
We could see everything that came by. It was either that or you rode uptown through the Dairy Queen.
And if there wasn't enough of them riding by, we'd get in the car and ride around.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember them days.
And I think, best I can remember, they were talking tornadoes in the area. And
what was the day like? It was Sunday, wasn't it?
It was kind of weird.
I have heard numerous people talk about how strange the day seemed to be prior to the tornado.
Never seen some of the things. We were sitting there, and the clouds would be going one way, wind be blowing the opposite way. And this was way before the tornado ever hit.
Yeah.
And then I guess right before it hit, you could look back towards Brent, and it just looked like a huge cloud, on the dark cloud, and it started raining, and it rained raindrops huge. Never seen them like that.
Where were you located when it came through?
I left the parking lot
at Save More.
Yeah, and started to Brent. So
you were
in the tornado.
You like to run into it?
No, we did run into it.
You did run into it. Well, tell us about that.
I ran into it about where Mr. Johnny Meigs and his house was, not far from the parking lot. I still didn't know it was a tornado. Couldn't stop the car. It wouldn't stop. It just blowing, never busted the windows, but it blew trash, pine straw on the inside of the car. So I threw it up and parked, laid down in the seat.
Thought you were in for a ride, didn't you?
I went by Miss Margaret Suttle's mother-in-law's house, Miss Duke's house, and afterwards I stopped right before you get to the Brent Baptist Church. That's where I stopped at. And Mr. Jim Suttle, I remember him telling me, he said, I saw you come by 6 to 8 feet off the ground.
So when you stopped, when you stopped your car, did you get out in a different place?
Yeah, I still.
Well, then you really didn't stop your car, did you?
No, I didn't stop it. It just stopped. And of course, when I got out and looked around, you could see, the church was gone. There wasn't a telephone pole standing anywhere, or light poles or anything. It kind of hit you, kind of what happened then.
Well, I know at that time you had to have been totally confused and disoriented, but what did you do after that you got out?
Well, the first thing, I went check on, my mother and my aunt, and to make sure all of them were fine. And luckily, just damage to the house and all, but other than that, nobody was hurt. And of course, then we just started going from place to place in groups, just looking.
Trying to verify where everybody was and whether or not anybody was
That's
hurt.
right.
Well, did you go on over to the church?
I went by it to start with, and then came back that way. They kind of had it. You really wasn't a whole lot of church there,
I know we've got pictures. You've seen these pictures, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's we're gonna be putting some pictures up for everybody to see. What happened after that, Alvin? Where did you go?
Well, actually, I was living up in Centerville, and I couldn't use my car, but I had my motorcycle.
Did it tear your car up?
It beat it up pretty good. It was drivable, but you couldn't go nowhere. So I ran back to, across the river over here and got my motorcycle and where I could get around. So we just went from place to place for days and still hunting and make sure everybody was.
It took some time to do an inventory of where everything was and what was still standing.
Yeah, because it was just amazing. There just wasn't nothing left.
Well, now we're using the statement "the day that time stood still," and I think I'm getting a picture from what I'm hearing from everybody that on that day it was such a traumatic change in everything that it was disorienting. People seemed like they were disoriented and they didn't know where to go or what to do.
A lot of people didn't have nowhere to go. They didn't have a home.
Did you see the community coming together to try to help people?
Oh, yeah.
And were there people from out of town coming in to help?
They did. People brought. It wasn't very long. I think Red Cross set up in Brent. And with water and different things like that. So it's just something that's in your mind you won't never forget.
Kind of just frozen in there, isn't it? That's what I think I mean by time standing still. It's stuck there. You'll never forget it.
No.
What kind of car was it?
72 Grand Torino.
What size was the motor?
351 Cleveland.
You know why I asked them questions, don't you? But that's what every boy was doing during that time, was either working on a car or trying to get a car, wasn't it? That's what boys did.
Yep, we did that.
I think there was something in our head that you couldn't have a girlfriend if you didn't have a car.
No.
So the first thing we were going to do is get a car. Well, I'm a little older than you are, but my generation was doing the same thing. The same thing.
Well, I used to tag along with all the older ones. But I worked in Birmingham. I was working at a Sipco pipe then, and I guess it was probably 2 weeks before I went back to work. And of course, they were real good about it.
How long did it take to kind of get back to some sense of normalcy there in Brent?
Probably 2 or 3 weeks before you could really
actually travel around,
and get around. And then there were still places you couldn't.
Did you know any of the people that perished in the tornado?
Yeah, I knew Mr. Clyde Mitchell's dad, and Mr. Bill Dial's wife. She lost her leg in there. Just lucky there wasn't more than that.
Well, after the tornado, what was your recovery like? Where y'all lived and the places that your family lived, were any of them damaged?
On my aunt and uncle's house, they had redo the roof and stuff, but other than that, it wasn't major stuff. Just we just tried to help the community all we could.
I have spoken to this with some other people that have come here. As I'm talking to you folks that were eyewitnesses that went through the tornado, I'm realizing there's some real common things that I seem to be hearing. One about time stood still. Another is that the community came together in a way that was amazing and impressive as to helping each other, and also the help that came from out of town.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I first moved to Bibb County in 1978 that the Brent community and the people that lived in Brent seemed to have a strong, really rock hard concept of their community and their oneness in the community and the value of their community. If there's anything that good came out of it that I've been able to see, I would say it's that the community came together stronger after the tornado than probably before the tornado.
Probably so.
You think that'd be true?
That'd be true. And they called, of course, the National Guard. They called them out. And best I remember, there was probably a 10 o'clock curfew or something. Couldn't stay out. Which wasn't no need to stay out. There wasn't nothing, wasn't much to do.
Well, I'm going to call on you a little bit deep here. We're speaking and doing the things we're doing here today because we recognize that there'll be generations behind us that won't know what it was like to have that sense of community. Is there anything you would speak to them about how to have community and so forth? Because with social media and everything that's going on, it seems like there's a disassociation of the typical community that you and I knew and grew up in, where if you got to know somebody, you had to sit down with them and look them in the eye.
Yeah.
Today, with social media, people call themselves a part of some community on social media, and they don't even know who the people are that are with them.
I think social media has put a damper on our society. I think it's good. Don't get me wrong, but
it has its good part, don't it?
It's bad, and I see that especially with the young kids, and they'll never see the things that we grew up seeing.
Well, in growing up, you need an older person that you can trust that will help you kind of figure out what it is to get along. Because older people tend to have a little more experience than younger people. Then you need somebody your age that you're friends with, and then you need somebody that you're helping along yourself a little bit.
That's
I think.
right.
And I would recommend to the young folks, if you don't have somebody that's older than you that you respect and you can talk to, find them. Bother them until they pay you some attention, because every young person coming up, this was something that I experienced in my life. You need somebody that's older than you that you can trust and you can ask questions to and get some idea of what it is. I had a fellow named Mr. Charlie Hafner that I respected very much. He was much older than I, but I would ask him questions and he never failed to answer them because he gave a little bit of himself to me and encouraged me to do things a certain way. And I think everybody, if you're young and you don't have an older person you trust, find somebody. And if you are not with someone that's a friend of yours that you can trust and share your life with and share experiences, find somebody. You need to be a part of a community. And in doing that, you also need to have somebody that's younger than you that trusts you and that you try to help. I think we all need that. And my life is proof of that. Did you have someone in your life that was older than you that you trusted and admired and went to for advice?
I did. I actually had, of course, my mother never remarried.
Yeah.
And not until after I got out of high school. And when I moved here, I went to work with Mr. Joe Patrick down at Brent Service Station.
Well, there's a story there all on it. Well, tell us about that.
And then
tell us about the service station. I've heard a lot about it.
Well, everybody hung out there. I mean,
everybody was all the guys, right?
That was it right there.
And what did they do there?
We just hung out.
Hung out. And watch people work on their cars and help each other work on their cars.
Pump gas, wash cars.
Joe Patridge was that kind of friend I'm talking about to a great number of boys, and you must have been one of them too.
And then I moved on a little out of that and went to work for Mr. Jim Suttle.
In auto parts at that time.
And even after I went in business, I talked to him just about every day.
I'll bet you that by watching these older men and how they lived their lives and how they treated each other and how they treated other people made you into the kind of businessman that you are today, because you probably use those same things you learned from those folks to run your business, and your business has been very successful, and I congratulate you on it. You're a standard here in this community.
I appreciate it. And I've had a lot of good people in my life.
Yeah.
And of course those two kind of stand out,
There are others that have named those same people.
I kind of grew up in the Suttle house. I stayed there as much as I did at home. So they just like my second family.
Well, Alvin, I appreciate you coming up here today to do this. I know all of us are a little uncomfortable when we realize that there's a one-eyed monster sitting over here that's recording everything we're saying. But it's important that the older generations, which includes you and me and others around here, step up and try to be there for the younger generation to help them figure out some of the tricks of the trade in just how to live and how to conduct yourself when you're in a group of people, how to be a community.
Right.
Our communities are suffering, I think, but it's not the cause of social media that's causing it, but the disassociation from one-on-one contact, one-on-one sharing your life, sharing your story, sharing your trials and tribulations, your joys and your sufferings, whatever it may be. If you're not sharing it one-on-one, and when I say one-on-one, I mean eyeball to eyeball, side by side,
Right.
You're really not in a community. You're on an electronic. Let me ask the young people this: if you think you're involved in a community now and a part of the community is all the people in the community. The older ones, the middle-aged ones, the younger ones, they're all your community. If you're not a part of that community, why not? Is it because of electronic media? If it is, let me ask you this question. If the power went off and we didn't have any electronic media, would you still be a part of a community? If the answer is no, then you're not a part of a community. Get involved in your community. Find someone that's older than you that you can listen to, that you admire and you trust to give you good information and advice on issues, whatever the issues may be. And be a part of a community. Learn from the older generation and those around you, and then help the generation behind you, and I think God will bless your life. Because that's what we're all about. If we're not doing something for someone else, then what are you living your life for? You really need to have a foot, and you and your family have. I appreciate and admire the folks that are coming in and doing this, because every one of them have had a footprint in this community, and it'll go on for years to come. You've affected a lot of people. You've been involved with a lot of people. You've been a part of a community. And I think communities are extremely important. So I encourage the younger generations to do that. Get involved in your community. Be a citizen. Do your part to help the community and not tear it apart. You're going to need it. We all do. I thank you. I'm David Daniel with the Centerville Press. Thank you, Alvin.
Thank
God
you.
bless you, bro.
You too.